So hopefully everybody on the panel is going to come back in here and join us. I want to thank all our presenters for, um, the good work that they did and taking the time to present today and now be around for the Q&A session. I want to remind everybody, you can submit questions through the Zoom Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Put those in. We'll read them off. We've got, I think, about 15 minutes that we can devote to questions if we have that many. So with that, I'm not seeing any questions. I can throw a couple out there, maybe for both CONDOT and MBTA. On the ridership side, and I know this is a little off topic at an engineering conference, but I know especially CONDOT, your return to your riders varies greatly by your routes. I mean, is there anything you're seeing as post-pandemic, any trends, and which trains are doing better at bringing people back and which ones are really struggling and things of that nature?
Yeah, thank you, Nate. That's a good question. As we look at the ridership, and as you mentioned, the different lines, they have different trends. What we have been hearing on the Metro North line, with the telework and the change in the schedules also in New York, that has put a little twist, on the ridership. But now we see with the telework, preferable Mondays and Fridays, that we see more that the ridership is more for tourism, so it's not more as work related. We have seen that change. We're getting a strong too on the Hartford line. So each line is unique, but definitely we're still analyzing the trends, and there's a change, which we're trying to adjust.
And at the MBTA, we're having a very similar experience to what was just described. We're seeing some pretty significant variation between our 14 lines and the rate of ridership return. System-wide, it's about 65%. We have some lines that are as high as 85 or 90% of pre-pandemic ridership, and some that are still lagging around 40 or 50%. So it averages out to about 65%. Again, we think that telework and the regional employers' return to office policies that are evolving over time plays a major role. And part of the reason, again, similar to what CONDOT is experiencing for the variation between lines, is that the different lines serve very different areas of the Commonwealth in terms of demographics and geography and the types of folks that utilize the service there.
Okay, yeah, we're hearing that a lot across the board. Is Monday and Friday are now part of the weekend as far as kind of ridership go. I think there's a lot of telework Mondays and Fridays, and we're seeing that shift in the types of riders, whether it's on a bus or a train or no matter where it is. We've heard quite a bit of that, especially in out of the Boston market. So have a few questions that have come in now. So here's one for CSX. What are priorities for investment in the former PAR lines in regards to yards, line velocity, vertical clearances? I'm guessing they're maybe, in what order are you looking at these things, Ed? And now that you bought it and you figured out what you bought, how are you approaching your rehab work?
Certainly. Yes, we've already invested since the acquisition this past summer substantially in the yard in Portland, Maine. We call it Rigby Yard. Rebuilding that yard and upgrading. We've changed out rail on a good portion of the line from Worcester north to Air. A lot of rail planned for work. They'll be starting here in a week or so in the very northern reaches of Maine on the former Pan Am system. So a lot of rail work is where we're starting. We're also doing some tie and surfacing. The grants that are out there that are in process are a little bit more complex. The way we're attacking it from trying to replace all of the small 85-pound rail with 136-pound welded rail. is the grants were written at a time when there were much more, what's the word, very pinpoint precision, you know, this particular crossing, this particular switch, et cetera, and didn't envision at the time, because it wasn't thought about at the time as a possibility, a more wholesale upgrade with the intention of improving our velocity, the speeds, and reliability, et cetera. So a lot of good work going on up there. It's very track focused. We did do a substantial amount of bridge work. Interestingly, the bridge work last year focused a lot on some of the branch lines, some of the lesser thought about lines that quite frankly needed a little bit of love. And again, we also worked on some of the buildings. So it's a full scale effort, and it's going to continue. We've got another couple aggressive years of track upgrades, signal improvements, et cetera. And then the clearance items, which I mentioned in my presentation, those will be much more longer term efforts, you know, working cooperatively with our various DOT partners on those.
Okay, and then another one maybe here for you, Ed, to asking in regards to passenger rail and CSX's plan. So I guess around what you have for projects on the books. I know you talked about some double tracking. There's an ongoing project in Wells, but are there other things that are high up on the list?
The projects that were in play before are still in play now. Nothing has changed there. And we work cooperatively with Amtrak and other passenger entities across our network, you know, MARC and Virginia Railway Express and MBTA, et cetera. So I don't see that changing. We work cooperatively, and we'll continue to do so. There's some good opportunities, I'm sure. Still learning the network. I've only spent a little bit of time up in that part, and looking forward to learning it more, to see what other opportunities there are.
July and August is a good time to come look at the railroad up here.
It was beautiful in September.
Okay, kind of a question, I think, for everybody, you know, what are the most unique challenges of operating railroad service in New England compared to other regions in North America? And they list off a few things: harsh winter conditions, aging railroad infrastructure, population density, multiple states, topography, those types of things. If somebody wants to tackle that, I'd kind of say all of the above, but if somebody wants to talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, I'll go first and just agree. It's all of the above. I mean, we have a really robust winter preparedness program, but winters are still challenging. We end up running a very minimal service during severe winter events. We expect damage to rolling stock from fallen trees. The salt really does a number on our grade crossings and on platforms for different reasons. I totally agree with the high population density residential areas. So we have a lot of unhappy abutters that we hear from a lot because of just normal train and railroad noise, but also idling locomotives often in the winter. Grade crossings, again, and I think Ed's presentation really effectively spoke to the inherent danger of grade crossings, and we struggle with that on MBTA commuter rail as well. And then again, the aging infrastructure. When a lot of the elements of the railroad were built around the same time, and they're all sort of deteriorating and coming due for replacement around the same time. And that was one of the things I was touching on in my presentation, was that the capital program is large and it's comprehensive, but it is not nearly substantial enough to bring the entire system up to a state of good repair and address all of these needs of these aging assets in time to keep up with the growing demand for passenger service.
And if I may add, Mike, I agree with everything what you say. Also, constructability is a biggest challenge too for us, because as we talk, we're going to replace 4 major movable bridges. And, just to make sure that we minimize the impact to the rail operations is a big challenge in a dense populated areas, Connecticut and the Northeast. But Mike, you are right. I just wanted to point that out too. So it's a big challenge for us. So we have a lot of work, ahead, and we're continue planning to do that.
Okay, we'll move down the list here. So another question for another one for CSX. The recent New Hampshire State Action Plan for grade crossings. There's a crossing on the main line identified for possible grade separation. In general, will CSX work with DOTs along the former PAR lines to identify crossing eliminations and implementing them?
Absolutely. That's we actively work with all the states and provinces that we operate in. And eliminating grade crossings is one of the focuses of our public projects team. It is mutually beneficial. A lot of times folks may not see it that way, but a grade separation is long-term best for all. It's not just the elimination of the hazard, it's also the elimination of the inconvenience, elimination of the not just the inconvenience of the passing trains, but the inconvenience of that grade crossing will have to be reworked about probably every 6 to 8 years. And something that was mentioned previously here in the discussion with the road salts and so forth might even be quicker than that if heavily used up in this part of the country. So grade separations we're big proponents of, and it's important that those grade separations be at modern clearances as well. That's a critical factor that might be a slight change, but certainly one that we'll work cooperatively with our DOT partners to help make happen.
Okay, I'm going to jump around a little bit and get Jay in here. Here's one for you. Curious as to the percentage increase of expected capital spend over the next couple of years compared to the past couple of years. And is that driving the contractor capacity challenge?
Well, I think we strive for a $2 billion capital program at MBTA, and that's been our target for the last few years. We got close a couple of years ago. We spent $1.97 billion on infrastructure improvements across the entire system. It's still our target today, but we have coming out of the pandemic, we have had supply chain issues that have drug us down a little bit on implementation and a few other things with hiring. We've got a bit of a shortage of staffing across the entire MBTA, like a lot of other transit agencies, and I'm sure CSX may be sharing in that. It's hard to find enough staff to continue the operational side of things, and then we're kind of an add-on to that. We need a lot of operational support to conduct and complete all of our capital work. So if operations is healthy from an FTE or an employee standpoint, then that's good for us. And right now we've got a fair ways to go to get back to the level of staffing that allows us to deliver that $2 billion a year program. But the money's there. We've been fairly successful on the grant side of the house, and we expect to continue to bolster our CIP with additional grant funding over the next couple of years. So it's going to stay steady for the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, thanks. We get time for one more question, and then we're gonna wrap up. So, and the last one for the MBTA, how is the South Coast passenger expansion affected freight service in that expansion area?
So the South Coast Rail expansion project is still underway. It's still under construction. We anticipate being in revenue service around the end of this calendar year. So there's no effect on freight railroads at the moment, but when we are in revenue service, the way that we're looking to avoid conflict with freights and mitigate any potential impacts is to, the project includes a number of passing sidings that would enable interaction between freight and passenger trains.
Okay, with that, I think we're.
I would just like to add one other thing too on our
Sure,
side.
absolutely.
We have a couple of things like the South Coast Rail is an expansion program, and we also had GLX, which is an expansion program for the Green Line. And GLX is now fully open to service, and so a lot of the work, the capital work that to put that in place and put it into service is winding down, which means the capital program side of the house is going to have to take up that gap that they had before. So that's where the expansion is going to be coming, at least from our side of the house. Is, as Mike said, that South Coast Rail will probably get into revenue service towards the end of calendar 2023. And then again, they're contributing a certain dollar amount for infrastructure improvements as well. And as that winds down, then the capital program will take up that gap, which will increase the amount of contract work that'll go out and go out to contractors, DBEs, and DEI firms. So thank you.
Yeah. So I think we've got a couple more minutes. I'm going to ask a kind of one final question, and folks can jump in. So whether it's on the freight side or the passenger side, and I think it was mentioned in the MBTA proposal presentation. What goes into making those decisions on, operations versus capital? Where do you shut down a line? Where do you go out and try to mix and do maintenance or larger projects while you're still operating service? What are the kind of factors that go into those types of things? And is it a set matrix, or is it kind of line by line, seat of the pants, or how are you guys approaching that type of stuff?
There's no set matrix. It is kind of line by line, but not quite seat of the pants either. I mean, certainly we look at the numbers of riders that would be affected by the outage and for how long. So the duration is a significant consideration. I will say that we changed our service model during the pandemic, which has made it a lot harder. Previously, we operated this very, very traditional AM, PM peak driven commuter rail service. And because of the sustained demand for service that we saw in the midday, we moved to a more clock face, consistent hourly or half hourly service throughout the day, depending on the line. So what that means is those work windows to do maintenance in the middle of the day have gone away. I mentioned abutters and complaints from communities earlier, and I would say that in the last 5 to 10 years, we've also lost our ability to do a lot of work overnight and on the weekends. So that's really what's driving the need for these shutdowns. And we've sort of arrived at the position that it's unavoidable. And the best thing that we can do is try to minimize the number of customers impacted and for the shortest possible duration in order to complete the work, and then give our customers plenty of advance notice so that they can, plan alternate transportation.
And for Connecticut, it's the same way. We go line by line and evaluate that. One of the challenges, as part of time for CT, we're trying to increase the speeds, but we're also trying to do a lot of work at the same time. So hopefully, once the project is complete, we'll be in a good shape. But that's the challenge right now. And again, as Mike mentioned, evaluating by line and see, to minimize the disruption.
Okay, with that, I think we've kind of wrapped up this session. Again, I want to thank all the panelists. I think it was a good discussion and a good mix of topics.